Hello Eagles Nation, Vincent Focht here, and welcome to a Week 2 Eagles Chat. We're here at Eagles Chat. We get down right to the news you want to hear on your birds. But before we get into it, make sure you like and subscribe to the Eagles Chat YouTube channel, as long as following us on Instagram at Chat Eagles, where you can find daily updates on your birds, and you can also find our Instagram in the description of this Eagles Chat video. But now let's get right into it. And as we all know, the Eagles went up against the Atlanta Falcons and lost with a final score of 22-21. So the Eagles had an opportunity yesterday to put the game away. They unfortunately failed to do so and completely went down in flames and exploded at the end of yesterday's game, therefore resulting into this 22-21 loss, which then results in the Eagles' regular season record going to 1-1 on the campaign. But now, moving into Jalen Hurts' play. So after all the negatives that came out of a game like that yesterday, there were some positives. And looking at how Jalen Hurts' performance was from the beginning of the game all the way through to the end, there definitely was a difference. Now, when I saw the first drive of the game, I thought in the back of my head, oh, here we go. But as the game progressed, I started to see a lot of things that I haven't seen out of Jalen Hurts in a long time. And when I mean a long time, I mean all of last season. I have not seen some of these things from Jalen Hurts. But first, let's go over his stats. 23 out of 30 for his passing, 183 yards, 1 touchdown, and yes, he did have that 1 interception at the very end of the game, which sealed the deal for the Atlanta Falcons on their win. But looking at Jalen Hurts, some of the positives I saw from him, the positive development that I saw from him was him being able to get the ball out of the pocket at a faster rate, him stepping up in the pocket as well, and him using his legs and getting good gains on his running attempts. Now, yes, we did see him with some strong running attempts back in Week 1, but the difference was in Week 2, the running attempts that he did have, they were, probably averaging, if I was to go off the top of my head, I don't know the exact number, but off the top of my head, I would say on the specific attempts that he had, I'd probably say an average of around 10 to 11 yards on those specific carries that he had. Now, of course, there was that one big-time carry. You can see that play and review that play again on the Eagles Chat Instagram page. We have it posted. But, again, like I said, Jalen Hurts really used his legs in clutch situations to help move the offense down the field when there really wasn't anything there. And that's a big piece of being a QB and being a leader at QB, is being able to help push your team down the field even in a situation where there really isn't anything there. And Jalen Hurts definitely did not fail to do so yesterday. So like I said, as the game progressed and moved forward, there was definitely improvement from Jalen Hurts. Now, there was still some of that hesitation that we saw yesterday, but again, that was mostly in the beginning. As the game developed, that started to disappear, and he actually started to step up in the pocket and make a lot more quick decisions. Because usually what happens with Jalen Hurts is, we tend to see this a lot, he locks onto a specific receiver, and once he locks onto that specific receiver, say that receiver he's looking at gets covered, then he starts scrambling all over the place, and it usually ends up resulting in either him throwing it out of bounds or him, scrambling and running around, and eventually he turns right into a sack for a big loss of yards. So that is definitely something that I saw not as much yesterday from Jalen Hurts. And I saw, like I said, as the game moved forward, he definitely got better. And again, it's still Week 2, and you have all new coordinators. People still tend to forget that this is a team that practically still has a complete brand new coaching staff. Everyone, basically, but Nick Sirianni, coordinator-wise, is brand new. So, it's still going to take some time to develop, but what I'm seeing out of the offense that I really didn't see at all from the offense last year is a rhythm. And I'm also starting to see stuff from Jalen Hurts that I had not seen from him last year. I saw it from him in the 2022 season when the Eagles made that Super Bowl run, but I didn't see it from him last year. And what I saw from him yesterday was definitely a step in the right direction. He definitely improved, that is for sure. But now moving on to a part of the Eagles that didn't improve, and definitely there was not much positives out of this part of the defense, and not this part of the defense in general. And now to go over parts of the defense with the defensive line and the part of the secondary. So to look at it, you probably saw that little caution sign move through the screen, and that's there for a purpose, and that is there's definitely a lot of concern for the Eagles' defense, especially out of what we saw yesterday. And looking specifically at the defensive line, that is really concerning. If I was to put the window of when the defensive line was on the field. If I was to put that in a 100% window, I'd probably say only 10% of the time the defensive line actually got good pressure on Kirk Cousins. And me saying 10%, that's being generous, by the way, folks. Me saying 10% is being generous because, I mean, yesterday, there wasn't anything there. Now, yes, Milton Williams did get a sack on Kirk Cousins, and there were some pressure now and then from the defensive line, but all in all, there wasn't much. And if you blinked, you probably missed the pressure and the amount of pressure the Eagles' defensive line got on Kirk Cousins. Now, if you look at the past times Kirk Cousins played at the Link, looking back to the Minnesota Vikings, we'll use that as an example. What is something that happened? The Eagles' defensive line got good pressure on Kirk Cousins, then resulting in him not really having a good game. I mean, we all remember that time Darius Slay and Justin Jefferson were paired up, and Darius Slay had the game of his life. A lot of the reason for those throws and the interceptions that Slay got from that game against Minnesota was because the Eagles' defensive line was getting good pressure on, was just getting good pressure on him, which is something that we did not see at all yesterday, and that showed. I mean, no pressure on Kirk Cousins. What happened? He ended up going down the field and torturing the Eagles' defense, especially on that final drive the Atlanta Falcons had, which was an absolutely pitiful outing by the defense there, especially on that final drive. I mean, I don't know what else really to think. It took the Atlanta Falcons probably around 2 minutes, and I'm not talking about 2 minutes on a football clock. I'm talking about just 2 minutes in regular time, in general, to get down the field. That was pitiful. There's definitely a lot of room for concern of the defensive line not getting pressure, and as well with the secondary not being there at either. I mean, there was a lot of times where the secondary didn't even show up, and the Minnesota Vikings, or excuse me, the Atlanta Falcons were killing the Eagles with the short pass game. So now to look at some of the positive contributors of the defense, we have to mention right here Mr. C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who came up with a clutch stop, who filled the gap in the defensive line. That was definitely a big stop. And of course, after that happened, a lot of Eagles fans thought in their minds, including me, that the Eagles had this. Unfortunately, little did we know, coming up in a little bit, the Eagles would completely explode at the end of the game, therefore resulting in the unfortunate loss. But another guy that I really have to mention that I really didn't think had enough light brought to him, and that is Mr. Thomas Booker. Now, the reason I mention him is I think he did an incredible job with holding the edge and forcing the running back inside, which is something that I didn't see from guys, for example, Bryce Huff. I didn't see that from him at all. But again, to go back to Thomas Booker, I definitely think he did an incredible job with holding the edge, like I said, forcing the running back inside, which helped give them some good running game stops for the defensive line yesterday. So had to bring some light to him, but now to go on and continue to talk about Bryce Huff, who was a guy that was being brought into the Eagles on high expectations, a guy that was Haason Reddick's replacement and was expected to do real well. Let's just say, yeah, he hasn't done that well. I mean, looking at his stats, he has 0 in every single category. That's not good for a guy that's supposed to be brought in here for high expectations to have 0 sacks, 0 fumble recovery. I mean, you could go on for the sacks of a defensive lineman, or excuse me, the stats of a defensive lineman. That's not good. And he didn't show up in week 1. Now, of course, it's week 1. Some people give players leeway in week 1 because, it's still some time to develop, especially if you didn't play much in the preseason. So week 1 was a little bit of an exception. But to not show up again in week 2, now that starts to bring some concern. And I'm not going to be the type to spread rumors around, but there's people out there saying, oh, Howie Roseman may be looking at trying to get Haason Reddick back, because we all know that the situation between Haason Reddick and the New York Jets, which is absolutely going nowhere. No progress has been made on that at all, and there's not going to probably be any progress made on that whole situation. But people are saying he may go back to get Reddick. I'm not going to spread any information or say anything that may be false information, because none of that is confirmed facts at all. But the look at Bryce Huff again, it is extremely disappointing. He is extremely disappointing to not show up in week 1, and at the same not show up in week 2 at all, which is a guy that is coming in here with high expectations, a guy that they thought would fit this defense well, has not fit it well at all, and has really not performed at all, and has underperformed at a big level. So now moving on to the offense. So we already covered the QB situation for the Eagles, but now let's move into some of the offensive contributors. First, starting off with Devontae Smith, who filled the role of wide receiver 1 since A.J. Brown was out yesterday. Devontae Smith had 7 receptions for 76 yards, 1 touchdown. And our next contributor is Saquon Barkley, who had 22 carries, 95 yards passing, receiving. He had 4 receptions for 21 yards. So, of course, there's a lot of talking going around Saquon Barkley, especially at the end of the game where, yes, if Saquon Barkley would have caught that ball, it most likely would be a totally different situation right now. It would be, the Eagles would most likely be 2-0. Not most likely, they would be. If he would have caught that ball, that would have sealed the game. But I don't like hearing people blaming the loss on him. Now, in this type of situation, we have to get behind him as fans. He's been receiving all types of negative comments all day today because of what happened yesterday. Yes, like I said, I understand. If he would have caught that ball, that most likely would have been the end of the game. I get that. But that doesn't go for the horrible play the defense had or the struggles the offense had in the beginning of the game, where by the time halftime came, it was extremely low-scoring halftime, which people, seeing the Eagles and the Falcons, they thought it would be a lot more of a high-scoring game, especially at halftime, but it wasn't. So you cannot blame this loss on one play, and that's what I've been hearing a lot of people talking about all day today. They're blaming the loss on that specific play. And he's owned up to it. He understands. He said, I understand. I let my team down. He said it to the press. But again, there's absolutely no way you can be blaming this game, this loss, on that one play, that one drop pass by Saquon Barkley. Yes, it should have been caught. There's no reason it shouldn't have been. But hey, I understand. Yeah, these guys are pros. He's been doing it for a long time now. But this is a specific time where we need to back our player, get behind him, and help them into week 3. It's behind us. It's time to move on, like I said, to week 3. And speaking of week 3, is the Eagles will be traveling down to New Orleans against the Saints Sunday, September 22nd. So this is the Eagles' first 1 o'clock game of the season. And like I said, the Eagles need to put this past game behind them. This is where we need to get behind our team and back our team to help them into week 3 because they have a tough opponent. The Saints have absolutely ran over their past 2 opponents, one obviously being the Panthers. Yes, we understand. Yes, it's the Panthers, so that is not a surprise. But we all saw what the Saints did to the Dallas Cowboys in Dallas last week, where the Saints offense absolutely torched the Dallas Cowboys defense. And after seeing the performance that we saw from our defense yesterday, it brings a lot of concern, and it brings an insane amount of concern to the way the Eagles defense is playing right now. So the Eagles really need to make sure they work out their bumps, especially on the defensive side of the ball, because you're going into New Orleans against the Saints that have been, like I said, that offense with Derek Carr have been absolutely destroying the defenses. And, hey, hopefully the Eagles can come in ready. They need to get right on them at the start of the game. None of this slow start stuff. The Eagles really need to make sure they are ready to play. They need to get on them from the beginning and not let the Saints feel like they have an edge over the Eagles to start that game. So, hey, we'll stay behind the Birds. Let's, support them as fans, get behind our team, and let's get, help them into week 3 where they can hopefully get back on the winning side of things once again. But that's all I really got to say for this week 2 Eagles chat. And as always, go Birds. Have a good week, everybody. I'll see you next time.